There is a goal within the Nampa School District for this summer. Figure out what to do about book banning. A few weeks back, the Board of Trustees voted to remove 22 books that had been challenged by some community members. Some of those books were still being reviewed, but they were removed anyway before that review process was finished, which is why Nampa School Board President Jeff Kirkman told us last week the process for reviewing challenges isn't really clear, nor is it specific to books. And he voted to remove them back on May 9th, believing they could come back to it and create a new process and policy. There are plenty of point of views for the school board to ponder, which they began to do last night in a school board work session. Joe Paris hits on some of the highlights and explains some of the still hanging questions the board still needs to consider.
Work continues for the Nampa School Board as they take on the community question of how to handle removing books from school libraries. In recent months, some expressed concerns about pornographic content inside books. Board President Jeff Kirkman says the problem right now comes down to a lack of process for reviewing books.
There was some processes in place for this challenge book process, but personally, I just didn't see all of it at one time written down, something that I could hand to a parent in the community when asked, what is the process for challenging books?
Kirkman echoed his rationale for voting to remove 22 books, saying that he wanted to take a pause as the process to review and remove books seemed unclear. Nampa Interim Superintendent Greg Russell explained that the process being used was adapted from the process of challenges to school curriculum. Ann Christensen, a librarian at Skyview High School who was at the meeting and was a part of a parent, staff, and administrative team that reviewed challenge books, explained the process they used.
Reading his books, analyzing it, seeing if it's appropriate. My viewpoint as a parent and as a librarian and as a citizen went into that. And so there were books that we all felt that were appropriate and some that weren't, but that process wasn't honored. We felt like we wasted our time, but we felt like there was a process already in place and that we were following that process. I don't know why you didn't know about the process, but that's what we were doing.
Feedback was also shared with the board. Some book challenges have been vague and included no details about books or issues at hand. One example?
All they said was that it was pornographic in nature.
So 3 words. I mean, basically that's what it came down to.
That was the complaint.
But there was
all that list, 24 books.
Okay.
Nampa School Board trustee Marco Valle spoke up during the meeting about concerns with the current process, defending his vote in a previous meeting to remove books pending creation of a new process. A process, he says, that needs to be specific to Nampa schools.
An electric shock sometimes is needed to make changes the right way. And we removed those books, which I'm glad we did. But let's figure out the process. I think it's got to be clear, concise, well written, and it's got to make sense according to our community, not to Ada County, not to Colorado or Florida, and all those emails that we receive from all those places.
Nampa High School librarian Nancy Finney has worked in her role for 24 years. She says some of the books on the challenge list have not been checked out in 5 to 10 years. She reminded the board that non-curriculum books in libraries aren't forced on students, while also offering a solution for challenged books.
The books in the library are there for choice. They stay in the library. If a parent wants to take a list of books or optional books or whatever, any book that they don't want their child to read, they call the library and say, I would like these books not be available to my child.
And that's easily done.
And that's easily done by calling the school or emailing the librarian, either way, whatever way we put in the policy, right?
Nampa School Board Vice Chair Tracy Pearson pushed back on the idea, arguing some books just don't belong in school.
Some things have to have boundaries and have to have supervision in structure and procedure. And,
right.
I just believe some of those books just should not be in the library because I know how kids are. They're going to go find those books and they're going to look at those, what's in there. And I just think that school is supposed to be a safe place.
So a look inside what the Nampa School Board is weighing as they start to make this policy. And you may be wondering, we did as we were going through this story, how exactly does policy creation work in the Nampa School District? How does it work in terms of working with the district itself and the board? So a Nampa School spokesperson told me this, quote, "The board and district work together to create a draft policy, often based at least partially on suggested policy from the ISBA and other sources. The board reviews the policy and has the option to suggest changes to the draft or accept it. Once accepted, the district is required to follow that policy." So Brian, a big conversation moving forward is going to be, first of all, what does this policy look like? But also, how do you weigh the difference between an opt-in or an opt-out? Meaning, for example, if you were to have an opt-in process, that would mean that a parent would say, I'm opting in. I'm allowing my student to read X, Y, and Z books. The opt-out idea would be that you would have all the books available to all students, and then a parent could say, I am opting out my student from just having this. So it's really weighing the values and the ideas of two very different concepts. Do we have people opt in for everything or opt out for things that they don't want to be a part of? Kind of what they're weighing as they go through this process. The idea is still, though, according to the board chair, Jeff Kirkman, they want to have a firm policy in place by the time the school year starts. Last night was the first work meeting we saw on the topic. It'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks when they get together and kind of what they discuss.
It was interesting, enlightening to hear this meeting because, as they said, it was because of 3 words, pornographic in nature, that 22 books are now not in those school libraries. We don't know exactly how many parents actually complained about that.
We know at least one.
At least one, and now we have a review process going forward. So, or at least they're working on that. Yeah. So that's the enlightening part to me, is that they just were able to just say, that's it, based on those 3 words.
Yeah. So there you go. That's why they're reviewing the process. It's important to remember that some of the books removed were not necessarily flagged for having problems. They were just still going through the process.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out when they get to their final decision.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe.